Welcome to Fashion Revolution Week. My name is Agnieszka Wąsowska-Telenga, and I have the pleasure of greeting all of you on behalf of Fashion Revolution Poland. Fashion Revolution started with a very simple question: who made my clothes? But with time, we started asking a different question: what's in my clothes? Some of us asked it because of the chemicals, others because of the animals. But even plant-based materials were facing severe criticism because of the plastics they used to hold the materials together and to make them more durable. Now, with improved science and a growing momentum, we are looking at a time of truly bio-based materials, and we are seeing them more and more often in fashion collections worldwide. This is why we need this conversation now. And by we, I don't just mean Fashion Revolution, I also mean our partners, Vegan Fashion Repository, an online magazine dedicated to vegan fashion. Please welcome its amazing founders, Catherine Jung and Kaja Niedecka. Hello.
Hi.
And I think we can take it from here.
All right. Hello, and thank you, Agnieszka, for a beautiful introduction.
Thank you so much.
Welcome to you all. Now allow Kaya and I to introduce our incredible speakers. So let's start with Vivian Paraskiv. Vivian is COO at BioFluff and a multi-hyphenate entrepreneur scaling next-generation plant-based materials. And I believe everything that connects innovation and sustainability in fashion. So hello, Vivian, and so glad you could join us today.
Hello, so nice to meet you and so nice to see everyone.
Hello, I'm really glad you could join us today. So hello again. Next, we have Dr. Rachel Lamarche-Bachon. Rachel is a senior lecturer in fashion marketing and enterprise at Torrens University, Adelaide, Australia, and researcher and speaker on fashion, sustainability, and values-driven consumption. We also know Rachel as the founder of vegan microbrand Le Plant. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for the invite.
Yes, so glad you could join us. Next, we have Belle Jacobs, writer and speaker for climate, animals, and new fashion. Belle is also a co-founder of Fashion Act Now and Islington Climate Centre, also the founder of the Empathy Project. So happy you could join us today. Hello, Belle. Kaya, over to you.
Thank you, Kat. So first, let me introduce Marta Goss, who is the creative director and marketing lead at Nutico. She's also creative strategist and fashion innovation expert. Thank you very much, Marta, for joining us today.
Hello. Thank you for this invitation.
Thank you so much. Next, let's move to the second Marta that we have today, Marta Sieradzka, who is the founder of Estimon, a vegan and plant-based bags and accessories brand. Marta is also bio-based material specialist and lecturer at the International School of Costume and Fashion Design in Warsaw. Thank you very much, Marta, for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Pleasure being here. Thanks so much for the invite.
Thank you. Next, let's move to Alexandra Tasic. Alexandra is the founder of Botany Coats and biophilic interior designer. It's a pleasure to have you today, Alexandra. Thank you very much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure to be with this wonderful woman. Thank you for the invite.
Thank you. And last but definitely not the least, today we have also Maria Chani. Maria Chani is a fashion designer and the founder of Maria Chani brand. Thank you very much for joining us today, Maria.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you so much. We're so happy to have you all today. And to our viewers, please mind that we'll also have a short Q&A section at the end of the panel. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments at our YouTube stream. And we'll do our best to answer them in the QA section. Kat, over to you.
All right. So thank you again, everyone, for being here with us today. Let's dive in, shall we? We'll divide the discussion into two parts. So part one, we'll try to assess the current situation of bio-based materials in the fashion market. So the question is whether the bio-based materials are finally making it into the mainstream. And it's like a yes or no. Should it be a yes? What's driving this? And then whether this surge we have in this availability of plastic-free formulas in bio-based materials, whether this is also a contributing factor to the whole, let's just say, general surge that we see in popularity of the bio-based materials. So I'll start with Vivian. And to add a bit of context, let's just say that the bio-based materials have been having quite a few good years with some very high-profile collaborations. But BioFluff in general had an amazing season on the autumn-winter 2026 runways. And we have Colina Strada, Joe Tillman, Louis Vuitton, showcasing your pieces on the runways. I believe that with Colina Strada, the pieces are also in the regular collection that they sell. Yeah. So it is on the on the mainstream market right now. And we also have, various names and brands like Stella McCartney, Ganni, or Matilda Rose also working with you. So how did you guys do that?
Very simple. So, well, I have the honor of being the first one to answer, though a bit of pressure. But I think for us, it's been definitely a journey. BioFluff started only a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, and we are now at the point where it's, as you mentioned, we are going to be commercially available in a store, which is already the case with a couple of brands, but we are seeing that growth. So obviously, I know that I'm biased when I say that there is growth and there is potential in this space, definitely. I think what we've really worked on over the past few years are, I think, two main points. One, we definitely have to talk about the price. It's not something that leads the conversation, but it is definitely a factor. And that's a big piece of work that we've done with the entire team on reducing our costs, whether it's reducing our production costs, but also obviously the price that we're able to offer the material at for our brand partners. So that's been an incredible piece of work, and we've been able to reduce our price by 40% in the past 12 months. So now we are having different conversations with the brands because it ties, and we are able to really add it in their supply chain much more easily and at a commercial level. And then also the second thing that we've done, because I want to keep it short, but is also expand to other industries. So whereas fashion was our leading market, we also started working with interior designers, with homeware, and this week the rest of the team was in Milan for Salone, where we had 5 partnerships, also within the toy industry, which has been really amazing and very, very heartwarming. As a mom, it's definitely something that I'm passionate about. So I think those have been, the two factors that really helped us get to this stage where we are today.
I'm very happy we have Alexandra here that will touch upon the interior design part as well in a bit. But when brands approach you, do they also, is the formula, the plastic-free formula, and the fact that Savian is made from plants like hemp, nettle, and flax, is it also a big part of conversation too?
Yes, definitely. And having been in material innovation for a long part of my career, the beauty of working with fibers that are known, and here we talk about, flax, hemp, and nettle, is that piece of education that is, people, you tell them about these fibers and they intrinsically know. So you don't have to educate, where it's the brand partners or the consumers. That educational piece around new materials is easier because we all know what, flax or linen, hemp, we've heard about it, right? We know use case of it. What we have to educate our partners on is the use case of using it in the case here in fur and fluffy materials. So that is definitely an easier piece than when you're talking about a bio-based material that is completely new to the market. So it's definitely been helpful to drive those conversations for sure.
Great, fantastic. Now let me ask Marta Goss as well about a very similar question. So I remember Nutico has been developing you guys have been developing your formula like for 6, 7, or 8 years ago. You started there. And back then, the polyurethane and polyvinyl chloride was quite a common standard component in the lead alternatives, but you guys have insisted not to not include them from the very beginning. So, how is it now, and how are you approaching? Do you see the surge in demand, and is this plastic-free formula also a part of conversation?
Thank you. It's quite an interesting question. Actually, from our point of view, the story line of our company is it started a bit differently, because we started from apple waste as a main biofiller. So the first 5 years was actually working with these components, and actually after those 5 years, we switched into a completely different biofillers, which are now cocoa husk and walnut shells. So byproduct from the food industry here in Poland, the chocolate factories that work with these components. And well, at the very beginning, for our founders, it was actually crucial not to use PVC. That's why the first idea kind of changed. We always say it's an evolution, not a revolution, because thanks to this first approach, we knew that maybe there will be another solution that will work much better, that will be much more durable, and also will not produce so much water waste, because unfortunately the apple pulp needed a lot of water. So there was a lot of different steps on the way, and we are happy that where we are now, although the new components and the Nutico as we see today is actually a fresh one, because we commercial started last September.
All right. So, it's always, I remember every time I read about those innovations, and when I read this fantastic, also in Nutico and about BioFluff, this fantastic piece in New York Times as well, it's always a really, it always makes my day. So, yeah, it's fantastic to hear from you guys. Thank you. I'd like to pick Rachel's brain on that too, because Rachel, you have been researching the market for a lot of years before you started your own business, and
Yes.
I wonder what findings prompted you to do that. Was it a
Yeah, so that's
yeah?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So I actually am very excited to hear about everyone's innovation. I find the fact that so many people are working in this space fascinating. My own approach has not been utilizing these new materials. I'm using your traditional materials, but I'm sourcing them from more like dead stock options. They're all plant-based. But the idea was it stemmed from my PhD and my findings around vegan consumer behavior. And also this idea that there was really this tension within the market between this, as we've been already mentioning, the more polyester or plastic conversation of those products versus how that then translates to how people feel, especially in Australia, where I'm based, where we have such a strong wool history. So there was really a gap in the middle between where those two intersect. So what I decided to do was more to post PhD, once I was in my research, kind of stabilized research space, to try and see, are we able to develop a product that falls within that central space? So what we're about to start is actual degradability testing on all of the materials that are from plant-based sources, both as individual products, but also then as kind of complete packets of components, and how they biodegrade. So it's been a really interesting journey. But to add to the conversation really quickly as to the bio-based material, I'm currently trying to research and do a bit of a case study on kind of why so many applications, and I'm very interested into what's going to happen with BioFluff, because so many brands apply novel materials in kind of this one and done capacity, and it really becomes a marketing exercise beyond and kind of an integration into ongoing product development. So I think it's a space that's, you know, that's ready for disruption, but I think we're meeting a lot of market barriers.
We are, and we'll talk about it in detail in the next part of our conversation. But this, you know, when you have those bio-based materials and you multiply the way you can use them, I believe that's also a big, like a crucial part of going mainstream.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you, Rachel. Marta Sieracka, you've been running your own brand for the last 4 years, but I know for a fact that you have been experimenting with all those bio-based materials for almost a decade. So I wonder, did you also notice, well, first, some consumer behavior changes, and second, how did the formulas change over the years as well?
How much time have we got? I refer to the second part of the question because they changed massively. I mean, when I started, I would say that the technology was more or less there, but it was not ideal. And especially the result, which is like the most important thing in both business, but also fashion. And if we want to like convince clients, consumers to use something, it does have to be durable. And I feel like durability was one of the most important like aspects that very often was not delivered. And I do see a massive change. And it did evolve in a way that the components of plastics were like, you know, decreasing over time. And now it's like less and less and less. And now we have, for example, both of our lovely startups that I really love, both Natico and Bioflap, that you can see that they do like prove that you don't need plastics, like any like plastic derived materials to actually have something that is durable. So that's definitely something that did shift by a lot. And I do see more and more startups going towards this direction, which makes me very happy. But they do increase durability at the same time. So that's absolutely amazing. I feel like one of the reasons this might be happening is also apart from the, you know, the business side of these decisions and these tries, it's also the consumer behavior, because I do see a bit of a change in consumers because they are like it's starting to be like more and more aware, because now you can't like, you know, seal something and say, hey, that's great, it's vegan. It's not like that anymore, because people are smart and they do see if you're trying to, you know, hide something from them. So I do feel that's also something very important, that you can be true to what you do and you don't have to lie to consumers anymore, because something you do is durable. It is in some way great. And you can actually say that, hey, you know, it's an alternative and it's as durable. And that's something I like for the past few years. And that's something I was like getting asked multiple times. And I feel like that's the most important question from the clients, consumers, that they ask. And now I feel like that's something we can like surely say that, hey, it is as durable, but it has no plastic.
Yes, I think this is also very important when we're trying to fight this, well, a bit of earned misconception that vegan materials are mostly plastic. So it has definitely changed, but not many people know about that outside our circle. So every time we fight this misconception, we always use Bioflap and Nutico as your arguments to show people that now there's like no single piece of plastic in there anymore. Great, thanks. I'd like to turn to Alexandra and Maria. Alexandra and Maria have been working together for many years developing bio-based materials and then putting them, actually constructing garments, visionary garments from those bio-based materials. And what's really interesting is that if you look into Maria's design, you can see that there's basically no limitation, right, to the forms and construction that it's absolutely futuristic, and you see that there's no limitation in applying those materials. So I wonder, why did you guys pick biomaterials in the first place, and yeah, what creative opportunities they provide that the conventional materials might not?
Can I first?
You can share your perspective. Yeah.
I just, because I can tell just from my side, like a designer, because these whole things with biomaterials, that is Alexandra's part. She's contacted me and she asked me, and thanks to her, I choose to work with biomaterials, because her idea was very, for me, when she contacted me, was very like interesting. So I can tell, like designers, for me these biomaterials are very interesting, because I can do lots of experiments and I can play with them, and I can because that they are very inspiring for artists. They are very inspiring, and that's why when Alexandra invited me to work with her and with that biomaterials that she's like constructing, or how to say, that was very, I was very like, wow, I want to do this. This is very interesting, and yes, because that the symbiosis between human and between nature, it's very, very inspiring. And it's very, when you see that your model is wearing something that is alive, your dress is like alive. You can eat your dress. You can, like, if you are hungry, you are wearing something, and if you're hungry, so you can eat it. Like that model on the fashion show that was a few days ago, she ate her dress. And for me, that is, now I'm speaking from side like artist, that is very inspiring, and that is very like a good performance. So that is one thing that is very important for me. And the second, of course, that is sustainability. This is very important in fashion, because we know about that everything. So I think that these biomaterials and this idea is very good. But I must tell you, like independent designer, like I'm not big brand, I'm just independent designer. So it's very, for us, it's very difficult to have approach to these materials and to put that like mainstream and to sell that. And because first is that garment must cost a lot, and it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's very interesting. It's very interesting. And so, yes, for me, like I said, it's very challenging because of whole logistic and financial thing. It's very, very, very challenging. But like for sustainability and for like for me, like for artists, it's very, very inspiring. So yes, now.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add that it clearly pays off, because it turns a fashion show into a performance. So that's
yes. Yes, because you wear something that is alive, something that breathes with you. You know, something that is like in symbiosis with you, with the human. Your clothes is like part of you, and like you are wearing something that is alive, that is made from plants, or so. That for me, that is something wow. Yes. Now
you can't have it with
yeah.
conventional materials. Yes, you can't. So it's absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Yeah.
So I will leave Alexandra to talk now.
Yes.
Alexandra, why did you pick biomaterials in the first place?
This is something I would love to share a different perspective after the speakers that have shared their own journeys. The honest answer is when I was starting out 4 or 5 years ago, what I did not set myself to do was not alternative material. It was more that I was speaking with those materials, like with those pigments on my skin. It was like in a bit dangerous courtyard with walnut bark that Maria would know, because we have a couple of years participation in the fashion shows. There was also husk, beetroot peel. You know, sometimes when you have pigment on your hand that leaves a mark. That all that was, I noticed something that shaped my work ever since, and that is each material that I would carve out would record its own life. It would record its texture, age, maturity. Traditional materials, for example, by the time they reach a designer, somebody like Maria, they have usually been stripped off that record, that time print that each material show. Walnut peel after when there was no rain, it would be dark and it would not be mint green. This is something that we have been playing for a couple of years, and what this has locked was a new, completely creative. It was creative to at least that time became a design element. So animal leather is engineered to resist change, but like with this, botanical materials are kind of allowed to evolve and to have this patina to transform, and they would age with this honor. This is something that I want to share with you and to stress that I picked up a commercial brand similar. Maria and I were in a similar, where our scope is quite different than the rest of the panelists. But what happened there, the meaning that this peel had became embedded as a substance, and biology became our collaborator. And there was not a boundary between the material and the Maria and the process itself that required certain care for a couple of weeks. That would disappear. It would just not be there, and everything would merge. And this is completely different perspective on the consumer behavior, and the reactions to that is more of a encouraging this connection that Maria was inspired to share with us. And every piece, I just want to wrap up.
No,
every piece is 90. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
I'm giving up. Continue.
No, I just wanted to say in a very clumsy way that this is fascinating how time becomes a part of the performance of the material.
Yes.
Because we don't get to talk about that much. I would say that every time we talk about time, it's more about whether this is durable or not, whether it's biodegradable or not. Exactly. And now we get to experience the changes of the material as we spend time with the material. Let's just say, yeah.
Or expose it, yeah.
Yep, exactly. So that's absolutely fascinating. And just to add to the part that I know for a fact, because Maria's designs are very demanding for the materials, because the materials need to hold certain structure. So to see that connected with the whole beauty of the materials, like you said, it's absolutely a treat. So thank you for that. I'd like to jump to Bear, because with everything that we've talked through, so far, we do see that the consumer behavior change and the demand side have changed a bit, and the supply side definitely changed in fashion. But are we? Can we say that we've finally arrived at a moment in history when we can weave empathy into a business strategy? Can empathy be a tangible driving force in business, or we're still working towards that? Yeah. You need to unmute yourself, Belle, I guess.
Yes. So really, that's going to be a continued journey. I think a continued push. When you talk about empathy in fashion, I think in terms of radical truth telling, I think these amazing fibers will be even more enthusiastically taken up if people truly examine what's going on in the fashion industry, particularly, in terms of animal skins. And I think that's where a lot of consumer behavior is coming from. They're starting to realize that the supply chain is full of violence and suffering. And once you see that, offerings like BioFluff become incredibly attractive, not simply visually or even from a tactile perspective, but ethically. People want to do the right thing. Can we say we're here? No. I think the mainstream fashion industry is far too powerful and will continue to push back. So I think, all of these brands here, we have to keep, putting forward the fact that these are extraordinary alternatives whilst telling the truth about the fashion industry as it exists today. I mean, one of the things that this focus on going plastic free, for me, this call is so ironic because it comes from an industry in which 75% of garments are based in polyester fibers, where leather, which is touted as a natural fiber, is coated in plastics. So I feel as if, these bio-based solutions are so evolved and so they're so far ahead of the curve. It's really, really inspiring to hear the speakers today. But is the battle over? Absolutely not. No.
No, it's not there yet, but hopefully getting there. If we work together, then hopefully, I believe that if we've asked this question 20 years ago, maybe, we'd be called as, utter loons and, have security, accompany us out of the rooms. But now I believe that we finally arrived at a place when we can talk about it, and do something about it. And talking about the talk, I believe this is a perfect moment to move into part 2 of our conversation. Thank you. Let's move beyond the talk a bit, because there's like a lot of there are solutions. Obviously, we have the materials that are solutions to multiple problems: waste problem, plastic problem, etc. And we have stakeholders that are trying to drive a change. And what can we as stakeholders do to help each other to really expand our operations and make this more tangible than it is right now? Let's remember also, when we talk about the key challenges and opportunities, that we also had a few material innovators, some of them with really great formulas, closing down the last few years. So what do we need? What should we do to prevent that from happening on a scale? So I would like to start with Vivian and Marta Ghost at the same time. Let's see which one of you picks the question first. I mean, as material developers, what kind of support do you need from the market to scale effectively and reasonably?
I'm happy to start because Marta's still on mute. So I'll take over in the beginning. I think there's a few tangible ways that you can ensure success in the long run. First of all, it's being careful with your cash flow, because innovation does take time. It takes always longer than we expect. So you need to make sure that you have, the right capacity to survive the longest. So that's the first thing, your cash flow. I think the second is often those innovations, unfortunately, a few innovators that we've seen either pivot or close down, unfortunately, over the past few years or months, they were very CapEx heavy. And I think that's something that made them less nimble. So being nimble in this time where cash and money is not as available, fundraising is taking more time, it is more complex, it is, less straightforward than a couple of years ago. We have to be honest with that. Being capex light and very nimble is also a very big opportunity to be able to kind of survive in the long run. And then just to finish on a third point, I think coming from innovation and in the innovation world, it's also about sort of supporting your partners and stakeholders' expectations. We, in the world of materials, big brands, international brands, they have a standard that is based on how polymers behave. A polymer is always straightforward. It's always the same. It never moves. And when you work with plant-based fibers, there is an element that it is coming from nature. It will not always be exactly the same output. And I think that's something that I have also learned, coming into BioFluff and having that conversation, and where do you find that sort of, path between what, of course, you are as a material we produce, and we're really focusing on quality and on scale, etc. But also, how are you having that conversation with your partner, with your brand partner, to also let them know that this is not going to behave like a polymer, like fossil fuel based material. And I think that's the interesting piece, is having that conversation going both ways. That is really important.
And being able to lead the conversation sets the standards.
Yes.
Interest can follow. Marta, what's your take on that? What do you guys need?
Actually, we would say the same as Vivian said, but on top of that, I can add one quite an interesting, quite important factor that, speaking of fashion, but we can see it in different industries as well. It's the whole, not only the scalability, but the whole chain of suppliers and productions and manufacturers. So it's not just the product, like let's say material that has to be delivered, but then we actually put our product into already existing chain. Therefore, so many issues with it, not really always depending on the material itself, but so many factors. We also have to remember, if it's like even a small brand or like a massive corporation, there is always a pipeline. There are always work these people and brands on specific targets, and they work on really ahead of the season we are working at now. So we as a startup, we also have this experience working for various brands before, and we know how can it be stressful and also difficult to apply some innovation, because if you don't have time for it, or you don't have a partner that will join you in that case, it might be a bit more tricky. That's why we try to work with our partners. We test our material globally with different type of manufacturers, not only local ones, but also global ones. Therefore, we know that our material scalability is possible, and then we share these contacts with our clients. I think for the leather makers, it's quite leather or alternative leather makers, it's a crucial thing. So they actually, if they want, they can use those contacts. They are not obligatory, of course, but if they miss it in their own chain, or they want to deliver something a bit quicker, there is already this conversation on the table, and I can see it's a point that we kind of usually talk between different departments, that this is a missing link. We usually don't talk between departments, and maybe this is a solution to be applicable in the industry as well, to share the contacts and also work collaboratively in some of the cases.
I think it's something very interesting, because the way we have to change the way we collaborate with each other in a more not to be afraid of sharing informations, contacts, also sharing our concerns, because as you say, it's a whole different level of planning and implementing those materials. Trick question though, do brands and designers come to you, or are you reaching out to the brands and designers?
from our perspective is both ways. We also try to not only work with designers, but also artists, or like completely change the mindset of working with a material as it is. And we can see a lot of this in like a potential. I think also Maria mentioned something about eating a dress. It's a really interesting concept, and I have to say that we have a lot of this feedback whenever we are, oh, it's a trade show, or we have one-to-one meetings. Everyone wants to like try our material or lick it. Unfortunately, it's not possible. So with our chocolate leather, please don't eat it. It's not for eating. But actually, the sensoric element is so beautiful, and even Vivian and BioFluff, we know this amazing product, and we know the partners that working there. So also BioFluff, Sevian materials, they are so sensoric. They give this another level of tactility. And I think when we think about maybe biomaterials, let's also think about what can they do apart from being a plain material, what kind of application we can use it for. And they can have smell, they can have an amazing touch. And I think this is something that we can see also worldwide in trends, that we as humans, we really want to go back to this kind of tactility. And I think this is a strength in this kind of case.
Yeah, it should be.
And if I can add on to what you were saying, Marta, I think in our case, I mean, we were lucky to have some great exposure from whether it's in the press or through partners, obviously being in the LVMH prize a couple of years ago. So we do have a lot of fashion brands, specifically in fashion, but brands coming to us when they're actively seeking alternatives. Now, that being said, you know, when we started reaching out to interior designers and to homeware brands, we were doing outbounds, I'm telling you that. So, you know, it really depends. But ultimately, it's the product quality that speaks for itself, because, you know, once they, and I love that what you were just referencing to before, there's something very sensorial about this. It's, you know, what I absolutely love when I'm in a meeting and showing our materials for the first or third or 10th time is like seeing people just kind of petting my furs while we're talking about, you know, all of the use cases and everything. And that is just amazing, because there's something very, very emotional and sensorial about what we're doing. And yeah, that's the best part of my job, I would say.
Having people like petting you.
Yeah. And they sometimes just like sort of apologize, and I go, no, this is great, you can keep on doing it.
Yeah, that's actually like truly interesting, because what I'm hearing is that we need to go back to this very human connections and the human way of connecting, you know, this touching and smelling and eating, you know, like in case of Maria and Alexandra. So this is definitely, I think, something that we should really, you know, like keep in mind going forward, you know, to facilitate collaborations by doing, you know, this in a very humane and you know, in a way that encourages connection. Thank you. Rachel, I would like to pick your brain on that too, because you know, from both academic research and, you know, business you know, perspective, what key challenges and opportunities you see, and do they overlap, you know, these two perspectives?
Yeah, that's so interesting. One thing I had a conversation with a venture capitalist who wanted to pick my brain about the bio innovation space. And we were having a conversation about historical case studies surrounding, you know, major luxury brands or premium brands engaging with these types of materials. So one thing that we realized was that a lot of these kind of one and done, or I guess they were cool, they were exciting, they were being utilized by designers in ways to, as I was saying earlier, as a marketing imperative. However, and this is challenging what a lot of people are probably going to say, but I think that moving forward, in that conversation around establishing markets for bio-based materials, I think that we need to flip the material that we're replacing at first. And I don't want to say this because, like, I personally and as a researcher am very much focused on reducing the violence, reducing the harm, as Belle was saying, and eliminating it from the supply chain. But I think that what's happening right now is that you have a lot of brands that will incorporate a bio-based leather alternative and selling it to a customer that is not looking for that bio-based alternative. Whereas if we wanted to scale that material, what I think we should try to do, and for the brands that are here right now and those material innovators, is to actually sign long-term contracts, if possible, with mass market retailers to ideally change expectations around PU and PVC to be those types of materials, because the customer that's expecting the texture and the behavior of a leather product might be looking for a specific problematic with the innovative material. Whereas if you have a replaced PU or PVC, the customer is probably going to realize that the innovative material, which I know is much more expensive to produce, but maybe we can get it to a scaled space where that's not the case, that material, behaves better than their PU and their PVC, and that there's really no reason not to consume that material. So I think that we are at a space now where what we need to realize is that switching leather for innovative material so far is not what has scaled. So I think maybe we need to also go back in and see how can we scale and partner with mass market retailers. So that's really what I'm thinking, because we're pushing against brand heritage heavily. A lot of these brands that are incorporating these innovative materials, they have brand heritage, which is historically rooted in the utilization of animal materials. Whereas a lot of the mass market retailers, they're not. That's not their history. So it's much easier to tell that story to the customer and to make them try that material. And then you have a mass of consumers who know how the material behaves. Now, that's difficult for a material like BioFluff, perhaps, but even if it's just, on trims and products and things like that. But I think within specifically the leather alternative space, I really think that that's what the next frontier is going to be. It's going to be that mass market utilization and not aiming for those luxury brands.
Yes. And then we're back to the conversation about pricing as well, the costs and how BioFluff has managed to reduce the costs to make it more like affordable, just simply affordable to have it applied. Thank you, Rachel. And let's stay in this area, because I want to pick Marta Sieradzka's brain on that too. Because Marta, you've been working with almost all leather alternatives that were on the market in the last decade. So yeah, what's your take on that? How's the collaboration? How can we all contribute to make it easier to spread the use of them?
I do have to agree with Rachel on this one, because I do feel, and I kept saying that for ages now, even in our private conversations, that we do need mainstream. And now I'm very reluctant to say that mainstream brands are picking up and there's an increase in using innovative materials because of any ethical reasons. I'm very skeptical about this, but I do see the change in people. And I feel like that's one of the reasons why mass markets are doing what they are doing and why they will be doing that. So I feel, and I also see very much hope in turning way to mass markets and mainstream. That's definitely something that needs to be done. And I feel like many companies do that, which is great. And I do feel like there are two different ways of how consumers approach innovative materials, especially plant-based leathers, because they are people that are looking for something that mimics the animal-derived leather. They are looking for something that has like almost the same like similarities. It behaves the same way. It looks the same way. But having said that, on the other like way, we do have other consumers that are looking for something that is as far away as it can be from this, like, you know, animal leather feel and such. And I'm also referring to, you know, the sensoric part of like, you know, material creation, basically, and that you've also mentioned before. And I do feel like both are right, because, you know, that's something that depends on how you feel and what you need. But I do feel that there are startups that do this thing, and there are startups that do the same, the other thing. And that's also great, because we know that like mass market consumers are different. And I feel like trying different approach with different like groups of clients is also something very important. Like, trying to sum up what I've been trying to say, I do feel like mass markets are the way to go. If you like it or not, but it is. And I do feel like smaller brands, like myself, for example, are a great way to test the materials for startups, to like, you know, get like feedback, try to work with that, and then based on that they can go further. So I do feel like this cooperation, because I also think that, you know, we do work on like similar, like, you know, values. I feel like that's cooperations that, you know, both parties need, and then we can go further and just introduce it to the broader audience that will get it in the way they should get it, and then popularize it as they can.
Well, actually, you know, scaling and breaking into the mainstream does, you know, ideally involve as many, you know, customers also joining, you know, like joining this, you know, this activity of testing out the materials and, you know, getting accustomed to the materials as well. So yeah, exactly. Alexandra and Maria, with everything that you're doing, what do you need from other stakeholders to help you expand what you do?
I would like to say my gratitude to Rachel and Marta, and comment in parts around what they said. It's actually what I would love to emphasize with this limited time that we have. It's actually standardizing protocols for testing. So what happens there? So from my humble experience, as we already saw this commercial or in the mass market, brands often do not know what to expect from durability, aging, or compatibility with what they do. And testing frameworks were not built for a bio-based material. They're borrowed in a way from plastic. So an important one, this is like fully optimized system that has been here for hundreds of years. So what I offer here as my contribution to this conversation is experience I had with the winery, that we approach them and use their own grape skin grape from their own production of their own grapes, and that we use their terroir and their palate and their original agricultural residue and waste they had with the wine production, and then we edited their space that is involved and threaded in their environment they're spending time in. So that's something that I can contribute here by saying I cannot go with hundreds and thousands, but I can go there and say this is something that you can actually combine and merge with what you do and have immense joy and have a recognizable texture that's actually in time going to go away because I mean that was my case. Everything is going to go away, and I'm not emphasizing that durability is not, we cannot compare the durabilities of the leather and these materials that I'm talking about, but from my niche that I can connect with the living environment and the B2B businesses that we actually can benefit what's surrounding us, and to make our quality of life, bring it to the higher level. About the mainstream and about everything going there, this is very interesting topic. Thinking about that would require my thinking changing in this direction, because that would include joining with much bigger systems, similarly to my co-works, what they did. They had a couple of years of breakthroughs and research, and now they're just getting started with the support of the bigger system. So thank you for sharing your perspectives. This was my story, my personal story that I experienced, and this is how I wanted to contribute as much as I can, and hoping to maybe even join in the future conversations around how can we make this exposure in this united way. So thank you. Maria, maybe you would like to say something about the mainstream or commercializing the project.
Yes, I was not here for a few minutes. I'm sorry, because like I said, I'm preparing show, so I'm very sorry that I missed some few minutes. But about the mainstream, and for me that is very because that is very good idea, but for me, like independent designers, it's very, very challenging because like my garments are more like individual. So everything that I do, everything that I create, it's not mainstream. So this is something that I leave to bigger systems, not someone who I'm not so expert in this field. So for this is not, I'm not expert in that field, but I know that will be great. It will be great if we can do that, and but I think that is very challenging, and I think that business in fashion is very harsh. And because something I want to say that business don't recognize empathy. So you spoke about empathy and something like that, but I think that business don't recognize empathy, and in fashion it's very hard to fashion it's very, very hard to for how to say it, sorry, it's
to include
because it's not so easy for me, like independent designer. It's not so easy to be be in that big system. It's very hard to be in that system, and business is just business, just money. And if you are not making money, if you are not giving money, they they don't have empathy. They need only money, and that's it.
Well, I guess what we really wish for is that, and I believe it is doable, provided everyone's participating, is that we truly need to open the conversations, and then perhaps some kind of connections and empathies would follow. Because with between the material developers, producers, and, for example, independent designers, you guys do need a connection. You guys do need to reach out to each other, and then the collaboration, how collaboration starts. So it is tricky. It's been a very difficult process so far, especially in the established brands, where you have a lot of barriers, like communication barriers. You send an email and then it goes somewhere, and then sometimes it doesn't even reach the person that you really aim to reach. Right. Belle, I'd like to ask you about something. I think it's very important. I've watched your interview on Impact Legacy, and in there you've talked about empathetic leadership and leading by example. So could you please translate that into our panel today, especially given that we have all our speakers over here, about how do you see leading by example in our niche?
Yeah. So, gosh, I mean, it's been a fantastic sort of hour, and it's thrown up so many sort of thoughts in my head. We have significant challenges. Your last speaker, talking about empathy to business leaders is potentially, when they have to sort of make a profit, is potentially an extremely challenging exercise. However, I would say, if you look at the world around you today, I think there is a greater awareness that things are not going well for almost anyone. And one of the things, for example, we haven't talked about today is climate. I think you can make a business case for more climate-friendly materials, particularly if they're having to hit certain climate targets. Easing animal skins out of the supply chain is going to make that a lot easier to achieve. But on the other hand, I think all business, by definition, needs a moral core. And I think it's a time for bold choices. I'm sorry to sound so fluffy, because this whole thing about sort of the mass market has slightly thrown me, because it is very difficult to get it in there. And I've spoken to phenomenal sustainability leaders in fashion brands who want to do the right thing. But by the time they get to the boardroom, all of their efforts are kind of stymied. It's an ongoing challenge, but it's something we desperately need right now to see and again, to frame empathy. It's like, what is the effects of the products that you're putting out there on people, on environment, on planet? We need some moral courage in this time. I am very aware of the challenges that faces. But I just want to alert you to the fact that we are in a state of emergency. The planet is under threat. And I don't know what effect that will have, actually. It's quite an interesting one. But yeah, thank you for the chat today. It's a very big question.
It is, and I think it's a question that's going to stay with us, and it won't go away. Yes, I'd like to thank you for this amazing hour too, and ask you guys if there's anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up and finish. All right, great. So thank you again, and over to you, Agnieszka.
Yeah, I've been muted for such a long time that I kind of forgot about this. This has been a very, very strong, insightful hour with so many facets of this industry and of this movement. We can clearly see that there are so many things to do and so many aspects of these bio-based materials that we might still try to tackle. There are also those marketing-related aspects of it. Belle, you mentioned there is a case to be made based on climate for the business people. But then again, we have different target groups of customers and clients who are in this for very different reasons. And as it also was said here. I think Marta Sieradzka, you said this, that the mass consumer is a different consumer than this, niche consumer. So the path is definitely not going to be a straightforward, simple, and easy one. We have to be prepared from that. But that being said, I am very optimistic, which is not a very common thing when we talk about fashion. The developments in the technologies, and also the ways that material developers have been able to make those materials more affordable and more durable while sticking to their ethical and moral codes. This is very optimistic and very promising, and I hope that this movement will continue to have a huge impact on the industry, and that we will see more doing and like real tangible change. So yeah, I wish everyone a very impactful rest of the Fashion Revolution week. And I am very grateful to all of you for doing the work that you are doing, because this is a very difficult but very important thing to be done. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Can I just say one thing?
Yes, of course.
Or like a very, very last thing, because I wanted to mention that, it's a panel, it's a discussion panel on a topic that we can consider a niche one. And if you look at, how many of us are here and how many of us care, for the change, I feel like that's a very, very good thing to notice and feel, the change. So
Yes,
that's what I wanted to, emphasize here.
Yes, I 100 totally agree. So yeah, we're a little bit out of time, so let's wrap this up. Thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, regardless of what time it is and what you are doing. And thank you to our audience. We hope you enjoyed this conversation, and we are looking forward to your comments and questions that you may have in the future. We will make all that we can to provide you with answers. So let's make this impactful time really worth it, and let's share this positive outcome of this conversation. We are doing things, and it is really important. Thanks again.
Thank you so much. Thank you to each and every single one of you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
So much.
Thank you.
Great
Bye.
meeting.
Bye.